So in this video I played The Witcher 2 Assassin of Kings in 2023 for the first time. A couple months back I checked out the masterpiece of a game, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and thought I'd go backwards in the series and now see what The Witcher 2 is all about. I know it's a weird way to do it, but I was never planning on doing the whole series. I just wanted to finally get round to The Witcher 3 because it was like the last big and high rated game I had yet to play, and that was it. I knew I'd enjoy it and was happy to finally get around to finishing it, but I guess I liked it so much that I'm now checking out the other games in the series. With that being said, I'm still not sure if I'll end up playing the first Witcher game, just because it's quite outdated now, but that's not to say it's out of the picture. I've played and reviewed very old games in the past, so who knows. If you go on to enjoy this video or find it helpful, then let me know by tapping that like button down below, and if you love story games, then I have various reviews on a bunch of games. Without wasting any more time, let's check out The Witcher 2 in 2023. So the overall gameplay structure is quite similar to The Witcher 3, and you'll see me making this comparison a few times, especially in combat. Obviously they upgraded it, but for anyone that's thinking the overall gameplay is totally different in any way, it isn't. As I said in the first Witcher gameplay, it's now quite outdated, and they for sure massively improved it in this game. And of course the movement and responsiveness was way smoother in 3. The combat in 2 and following on in 3 of course uses swords, and it's so fun to experiment with, but also requires a strategic playstyle with a bit of thinking to block and dodge sword hits. The main character Geralt puts all of his force into fighting, even if you don't do much and constantly spam light attack, and that's what I think makes the game so fun and satisfying. No matter what you do or how you play, Geralt's fighting style always makes you look like a pro. For sure some of, if not the best combat in any video game. The best way to describe it is like Geralt's making a dance of his fighting, like a ballerina. Of course The Witcher 3 just immerses you even more into that, and the strikes feel even stronger, but still allows for you to be very fast on your feet with the improved movement. There's also a small amount of stealth in this game, which I like. Not anything crazy, but I'm glad you can implement it as well as the full-on action, allowing for a slight change in pace. I would say I wish they branched out a bit more, but the sword and dance fighting style this game is focused on, it just overtakes everything, and it's one of the biggest aspects that make the game so unique, especially in The Witcher 3, and it sort of makes sense as to why they also didn't add any more stealth in that game. Now The Witcher 2's combat at times cannot be as smooth. This is down to a combination of performance, with it being an old game. I did notice a few frame drops at fast paced moments, which is usually in combat most of the time, but also mixed with the more simple animations as it's quite an old game. Of course the lifelike responsive animations in 3 make the combat way more smoother and immersive, signifying more of that dancing style of combat I mentioned, as well as some of the camera angles in this game not being as free and you can't always see as well. The combat can definitely be added to with the skill tree as well, which adds quicker movement and more distance when you dodge and attack, for example. In the skill tree you can also upgrade your spells and magic to also implement into combat, and overall there's just so much to improve the experience with the points you gain, and this also helps with getting used to that combat control and different attacks or defenses as you slowly figure out the best way to take the different enemies down, because it can be slightly challenging at first. There's also quite the varieties, so as you go up against each one you learn their strengths and weaknesses. Of course there's even more to add to Geralt with the array of potions and oils that also allow for boosts in combat, and the crafting system overall is quite complex, and there's honestly a huge amount to help you out in craft. This also means the game makes you explore a lot more and gain resources for these crafting recipes, and you actually want to because you know it will provide that advantage. But there is also weight to each armor, resource, weapon, etc, which I really am not a fan of in games if it's really a nuisance, but it wasn't too bad in this game. I think I just have frustration from Ark Survival, where you may have to sort through your inventory more times than you would like. The game's world also heavily focuses on exploration and is way more linear than the freedom of The Witcher 3, and I obviously didn't expect a giant open world that you can fully traverse through whenever you feel like, and this doesn't mean that it's way less exciting or too basic, but The Witcher 2 definitely does leave you in one place for a while to make sure you get to grips and engage with almost everyone and everything in that village, whereas The Witcher 3 doesn't constrict you into a village or another area as deeply, but there's also an awful lot of stuff to do in one area, which makes sense as to why they keep you there. Tons of characters to meet, tons of main and optional quests, and lots more interaction overall. The first quarter of the game is spent in one town, Flotsam, and that's just the main story. You can always go back and explore whatever's left if you please. The Witcher 3 just chucks you in to freely explore this giant map like a kid in a sweet shop. This also means there's not really a need for a mount in this game, so that's not here to traverse long distances as you don't. This isn't to say there isn't times where you walk for a bit more than you'd like, not loads, but sometimes it feels quite slow moving through areas because the fastest you can go is a light jog, you can't sprint. Now I do want to mention the story and narrative of The Witcher 2. Of course, the face of the series, Geralt of Rivia, is the main protagonist, and faces the Witcher of Letho of Gullett, who plans to take down the kings of the Northern Kingdoms, who was a great antagonist for the game, who I really liked. The voice acting is actually pretty good for an old game like this, which I'm glad about due to how much dialogue there actually is, which I'll get into. The cutscenes and animation of the characters as they have a conversation could be a bit more fluid and varied to excite them more, but I don't want to be too harsh. And I must say, a big part of following the story is just the endless amount of dialogue and conversations. There is so much. As usual, there's many dialogue options, but it seems like there's way more than The Witcher 3. And even if there wasn't, the conversations do drag on about every little thing, I'm not gonna lie. And to follow everything that's being said after you've just had another lengthy conversation before that one, it can easily start to become repetitive and not really the most exciting thing to follow. I know there's lots of players that would find it very boring, and at parts I did. It does give you a lot of context and information, as well as just learning about the world you're in, which is followed in the gameplay as I mentioned. So there's a huge amount of detail that does add a lot to the story and the lore, which makes the game so in-depth and rich in character that, just like The Witcher 3, feels so lifelike, where you would slowly progress through and have lots of conversations when planning or moving on to something. So it can feel quite slow paced and a lot to take in, which can easily become confusing. But I think it's just one of those series that's so in-depth, you need to slowly but surely progress through and take everything in bit by bit to fully understand everything, all at your own pace, which makes the story stick with you forever. Sort of similar to RDR2, and I know a lot of people who didn't expect to be so engaged in that story ended up loving it, and it's the same in this game, but just may take a bit of patience. But the story is also quite short and overall doesn't end up being a really lengthy game, even with all that conversation. Around 24 hours in total, excluding the side content. So that's where I wrap up my review of The Witcher 2 Assassin of Kings in 2023. The game does hold up in present day for sure, and I do recommend it for anyone that is coming off of 3 or 1, but it's also a great way to start the series with how outdated the first one is. As I mentioned, the open world isn't as free as The Witcher 3, which I think a lot of people expect anyway. It is more constricted when progressing through the game, and it does go into a lot of depth when interacting with characters and getting to know each area that I know lots of people will really like to slowly follow through at their own pace. Although it could be smoother and more responsive, the combat does stay at a fast pace to what you may be used to in The Witcher 3, and heavily focuses on those dancing sword fights, of course. If you did enjoy this video and found it helpful, then let me know by tapping that like button down below. And if you enjoy story games, then that's what this channel is focused on, with an array of reviews on a variety of games, and a playlist of a series I've done will be in the description down below. Thank you for watching until the very end. I'll see you in the next one, and bye bye.